on the Perfectly Okay meeting on Sunday, uh,
Mm.
you had, how did you say it? Okay, yeah. So you said, how does the sense of agency come online? How is the illusion built? And I've been thinking about that since Sunday.
Nice.
And that was one of the things I was thinking about this morning because I noticed that. I noticed, whoa, okay, so there's a much more solid sense of being someone. I mean, I have to admit, it still doesn't seem to be, and I say seem to be because it's hard to recall what it was like, but it doesn't seem like it used to be the way it used to be under those
Yeah.
circumstances. It doesn't feel like there's as as hard and solidly a central target
Yeah.
as it had in the past, where it really felt like someone here.
Yeah.
In spite of that, it still felt like someone. It felt like here there's someone under threat.
Yeah.
And I was trying to look for that. How does that sense of self or that sense of agency come online? And for the life of me, I could not put my finger on that at all.
Is it when you feel that experience of like the one who is in danger, the one who's here, are we talking a physical sensation? Like, are you noticing actual contractions and densities that seem to be pointing to, I'm here, I'm somewhere here, I'm here, I'm
Yeah,
where,
there was tension in the body, that kind of feeling you
yeah,
get when something has got you stressed, and
yeah,
um, I guess contractions. Although at the time it really just felt like something had hardened,
mm,
um, and that created a sense of here, here
mm,
meaning there's that duality thing of here and then there,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah. There's
and
density
and
here, there's not density there.
yeah,
Big
or if it
difference.
is, it's different, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Um,
Our experience of it, though, I mean, is usually that I can feel this density here. I can't necessarily feel the density of the wall.
yeah, you're
What
right.
I'm seeing, what I'm seeing is a visual representation, which itself has absolutely no physicality to it whatsoever. It's just an intangible visual image. So the assumption is something feels real here. That, it's just light, it's just shadow, it's just color. That
Right.
itself doesn't have the density. So there's a comparison that happens between those two. This is, well, this is felt here. This is where I am. I know I have access to this, whatever's happening here. I don't have access to that because, I can't feel any of that. I can feel this though. This must be me.
So, in trying to get some understanding of how that sense of self comes online, is it sort of like the practice of looking into the moment of decision making, that it has to you have to be paying attention as it happens in order to be able to really see it. Okay.
Yeah, it really, really makes it help if you can actively watch the process from start to finish.
Hmm.
Um, it's so funny because I actually just wrote a very long inquiry for the November retreat, which is the second day is all on the feeling of control, choice, free will, that sort of thing. And it was a very long, intense inquiry just about that. I think it might act, depending on how long it is when I actually read it, it could be like an hour, hour and a half inquiry. We'll see. Might be a
Wow.
special, lengthy one like that. Um, but yeah, we can't take any of it for granted. We really have to break apart the totality of the experience. So noticing that, okay, I have a thought about, can you give me an example of something where that came online?
Well, do you not want me to use an example from this morning? Do we want to use something different?
Uh, how did that felt? I mean, when you had that though, you had like an immediate no feeling, but did you have a feeling of how did the agency feeling or the choosing feeling relate to that?
Hmm. Well, last night was different than this morning because this morning, um, I don't know if that bodily sense of no, um, I don't recall it being there. Um, I mean, at least not like it was last night.
Okay.
Maybe I didn't notice it, but this morning it was more just a case of that that sort of buzzy sort of sensation in the body um, that comes along with adrenaline, um,
Okay.
and the kind of constricted or hardened sense in the body, and that there's here and then there's all of that, which was including
Hmm.
the thoughts about the situation, even though the
Hmm.
thoughts are seen in the mind, wherever in the hell that is, um,
Yep.
that those thoughts um, were very much in the there category as opposed to
Okay.
here.
Can you break down so the feeling of being able to do something though, or make a difference, or make a choice? How did that get interpreted? Like you have contractions in the body,
Mhm.
you have thoughts about a situation. The feeling or the assumption that you can choose and do something is not inherent in the sensations, and it's not even inherent to an individual thought. There's a secondary process that happens, right? You have the experience that something happens, you have sensations in the body about it, it feels like you're under threat, you have that adrenaline dump, you have thoughts that might show you alternate snapshots of reality, right? Like different possibilities, which are all at this point imaginary.
Right.
What is happening that is creating the interpretation that this sensation means I can do something, that I have agency? And what is it that makes those thoughts seem like they are actual possibilities that I can entertain, choose one of, and act out?
Hmm. Well, those thoughts and bodily sensations don't actually contain that, although it is kind of tricky to tease that apart because it's something that the mind has been doing for so long.
Yeah.
But in other words, there's a part of the mind that still takes that as well, that's actual, that's true.
Hmm.
Like no, but it's not in the bodily sensation. It's not in the thoughts. It's that for decades those things are associated with making a decision, taking action, doing something to uh, interact with the environment, um, to try to change things or make them different. And
Hmm.
so it's really kind of guilt by association,
Hmm.
um, which seems to exist as a preformed assumption. Like that assumption's there due to that experience having been repeated over the course of years.
Mm. What can you then do to question that assumption? So, like, how is that assumption showing up? Is the assumption um, purely in the thought space? Is there some sort of physical
Hmm.
correspondence, correlate, cor, is that
Correlation?
is there a correlated sensation which is even associated with the assumption itself? Might not be
It,
about the situation, but about the
it,
assumption.
yeah, about the assumption itself, it kind of does seem like there's this very subtle sensation in the head.
Mm,
And I was able to kind of feel it and spot it a minute ago. Now it's not there anymore, but or it doesn't seem to be. Uh, but yeah, there was kind of this sensation in the head, and along with that was a um, not entirely verbal or languaged thought. It was kind of some words, but not entirely, not fully spoken. You know, the idea is not finished,
mm,
but there's an idea that is sort of um, kind of peeking over the edge.
mhm,
Trying to see if there's anything else. Yeah, I didn't see anything else to that other than just this subtle sense, physical, seemed like, I should say that, I
mhm,
should say seemed like a physical sensation somewhere in the head space. Um, and that that sense of there being an assumption there.
mhm.
And
Good.
it seemed like it was kind of sort of half spoken. But you know, if I ask the question, or if even if I don't ask a question about it, even if I just wonder, what is that half-spoken assumption? Um, I don't know that the idea that it was an idea partly rendered in language would really stand up to scrutiny.
Mm. Do you then have any basis on which to uh, make the assumption that you can choose something, that there is something to be done? Just be like, what I would recommend is going into when you feel that sensation, that vague sensation about being able to, assume that you can make a choice. Focus all of the attention on that sensation so that that is seen exactly as the little constellation of sensation in the head or chest or stomach that it is, to see that there's no actual meaning to that, right? That does not mean that you actually can make a decision
Right.
or choice. If you
Right.
can break down the different parts of that experience so that um, the best sort of explanation that I can give is really holding the attention on the different aspects of the experience until you are kind of dissolving that additional layer of assumption that's been built on top of them. So if you have the experience of, I just feel like I can make a choice, find the parts of the body that actually seem to light up, to contract, to buzz, to feel like they can do that, and then hold the attention so intently in those sensations that they lose all sense of meaning. And doing the same thing with, if you have like some kind of thought that's like not quite verbalized, it's not quite visual, hold the attention on whatever it is that seems like an almost subconscious thought, and just notice that as starkly as you possibly can. It, it might be very vague, but try to just hold the attention on whatever feels like a thought, so that
Okay.
again, that loses that sense of added meaning that it has.
So you're saying that if you can put the attention on it and keep it there, that after a period of time, it loses its meaning. It's sort of like what
Yeah.
happens when you say a word over and over and over and over.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay. All right.
There's an assumption when you have when you experience a situation and then it feels like I can make a decision about it. All of a sudden I see in front of me three different options that show up, and I feel like I can take any one of those options. And then I might feel the weight of pressure that I have to choose one of those options. And then that is really telling me that, okay, so now I have to choose the right one because I can get this wrong. And there's danger if I choose the wrong one out of the three. And
Right.
we can create all sorts of logical explanations about why, you know, choice two is the best and one is maybe second best and three is least, but okay, maybe I can see some reasons why that one still has merit. We can do like all of these thought exercises to figure out all of this. But in your direct experience, this is really the key of it, is that you can't tell that you are actually able to choose any of those options. They are all hypothetical thoughts showing up in your imagination. At some point, it's sort of like, when they talk about like in quantum physics that everything is like, in a state of quantum superposition. It's like,
Right.
the electrons may be spinning one way or not. They might be here, they might be there. And then once they're observed or once whatever happens, it collapse, the possibilities collapse down into one actual, now I can measure it because it's there.
Right.
Prior to that, it was in multiple places at one time. This is kind of like that, but you have a variety of different options that seem to be in front of you. These are all possibilities. Ultimately, you can only act out one of them. And once you do, those other possibilities were never it's clear they were never an option. You have no way to tell in your direct experience that you ever could have chosen anything that you already have because you didn't.
And I understand that and
Yeah.
I see that, but
Yeah.
I want to out this one thought because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know that it'll be kind of pesky if I don't.
Yeah.
So there's this thought, this idea that even after a decision's been made, that there was a point in time when that decision, those other decisions could have been made.
Yeah.
Um, and I understand the problems with that, but there's still this part of the mind that um, that sees that and sees that it appears at least partly true.
Well, it says that it's possible. And you probably have a feeling in the body that seems to say, yes, but I could have done that. And if I did, well, it might have actually turned out better. And now maybe I'm having a little bit of buyer's remorse that I didn't actually do that thing. All of that is happening now in the mind after the fact.
Uh,
Again, that thought that says, I could have made a choice then, is no more real than any of the other hypothetical possibilities that it imagined. This is all in the realm of imagination. What's real is the body sits here, the body stands to go and get a drink, or the body sits here and it remains here, or the body sits here and then it stands and goes to the bathroom. One of these things happens. The thoughts about what might happen and all of those other possibilities that it could have done are only ever thoughts. We have no proof that any one of those things might have actually happened. The fact that they didn't happen, that you didn't stand to go to the kitchen or that you didn't just sit here but instead found yourself in the bathroom, that is your proof that that is the one thing that could have happened. And it did. Everything else is conjecture by the mind. The
yeah.
causes and
Okay.
conditions at play were such that you ended up in the bathroom not putting more water in the bladder in the kitchen, right? Something was there that made that happen and not the other thing.
Okay.
But the mind is really good at coming up with imaginative scenarios where you can imagine all sorts of different things that might happen in the future. And you can retrospectively look back and see all the different things you might have done differently but didn't. And all the like run, loll, or run outcomes of, if I hadn't done this one, it would have led to all these possible avenues. And if I hadn't done this one, my life would have gone down this road and this road and this road. We don't know that. That's just the imagination. What we have
Right.
is what is here. The ideas of choice and free will and ability to, make decisions and all of that, that is only in our mind. We cannot prove that that is actually the case beyond, in our direct experience. We can't prove that outside of just relying on more thoughts to justify why those other thoughts
Ah,
were right.
that's really important little detail. Wish I could remember how you just said it, but you said something about those are just more thoughts.
Yeah,
So we make the mistake of verifying something that's a thought
yeah,
with more thoughts, and I mean none of
exactly.
those are proof of anything except for that
Exactly.
there's a thought.
Exactly. Yeah, I can imagine a story. I can imagine the story ending one way. I can then imagine myself looking back on it and saying, I should have ended the story another way, and then this other whole story would have come out. Yeah, but you've created the entire thing. It's just all imagination. It has nothing to do with the actuality of the world. It has nothing to do with the actuality of the body that's sitting here. We forget because it's like the fundamental ground of everything that we experience, we forget how much of our experience is always thought.
Hmm.
It is so deep, these layers of thought and layers of assumptions, that most of us just completely ignore so many of those aspects of thought that we just take to be part of the real world. And they're not. All of our thoughts about everything are thoughts. Our experiences of things are still mostly thoughts because they're still mostly overlays that we have put on it, some sort of coloration, some sort of judgment, some sort of assumption about it where we don't have the full knowledge of the thing, but we just fill in the rest of the gaps. All of that is thought. I mean, if I hold up a mug, right, you can't see this side of it. Right? But so you don't know that this isn't just a two-dimensional mug. I mean, for you technically looking at the screen, it is a two-dimensional mug, but your brain fills in all the rest. It says it's a three-dimensional mug with three-dimensional coffee that's actually potable and that there's, either nothing on the other side of this mug, or maybe there's like, this amazing illustration of a dragon on the other side of this mug. You don't know, but you can fabricate all of that. Whatever you see, the mind is creating this whole other half of the experience and it's doing it however it sees fit. It's like, oh, I've seen that jar like that before. I expect there to be a veganese label on the other side of it. Like whatever it is, we fill in. And we do that every moment of the day, but we interact with most of those as though they were just actual truth. It's just an unquestionable part of the world. So it's important to keep noticing the parts of our experience which are very clearly, overtly, explicitly thought. The self-talk, the really just, you know, seeing things in our play out in our mind, all of that very overtly thought. But then start to become aware of all of those like secondary and even more subtle layers of thought where we're referencing things that might have happened and the beliefs about I could have done something other than what I've done, or even the belief that I couldn't have done something other than what I've done, still a belief, still fashioned in the mind. Everything that we take on and understand as a concept, everything that we take on and understand as a truth is still something that is fabricated by the mind. It doesn't exist outside of the mind. All of the experiences that we have, that we take to be our real world that we are surrounded with, the people who we are experiencing, the animals, the loved ones, everybody, they are in large part our colored by our projections and perceptions of them. So they are mostly thought. There is something inherently really there, but we are putting most of that onto them by our thoughts. And then you even have those like more subtle, like you were talking about, almost subconscious thoughts that are like, it's just like a wisp of something that kind of feels like I know something. Even that, though, is still a thought. And even the thought about that wisp being a thought, being a subconscious thought, is still a thought. Like, even that is still not part of our direct experience. We can't really tell what it is. It is still a thought, about maybe a thought. Like, all of this, the more clear we can get on all of this, the more it leaves us in that sort of open silence that just, we don't know anything. We don't know what is going to happen. We don't know that we could have ever done something differently. We don't know that we can actually make a choice and do something other than what is going to just naturally happen. We lose all sense of grounding about the world being a real static place the way that I believe it to be, and then everything just becomes ambiguity.
So it's turtles all the way down.
It is, well, uh it's imaginary turtles all the way down. Yeah.
You said that I'm not going to be able to. I was hoping I could say it just the way you did. That by continuing to look at become aware of our thoughts and the thoughts on top of thoughts and the half-formed thoughts, all of this, and seeing how
Yeah.
much of our experience is thought, that we get to a point where, how did you say it? You said several things, and I can't remember the order, but you said,
Sorry.
getting to this kind of um, uh, quiet, open space,
Yeah.
place of everything is ambiguity. Um, um, I can't remember how else he described it, but so what you're saying is that um, as a practice, cultivate the habit of paying attention to and becoming aware of thought in all its forms and all the various levels it happens on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Exactly, because that is everything that keeps us in the state of delusion, right? Is a thought. Everything that keeps us with a feeling of self is based on a thought. Everything that keeps us in aversion and craving is based on a thought. Everything that keeps us in a feeling of separation and non and duality is a thought. There is something there which is just being uninvestigated. And so the most potent thing we can do is to really be aware of just how much of our experience is fabricated thought, fabricated by thought.
Right.
It is just thought. And what is here that isn't actually thought?
Hmm. What is here that isn't fabricated by thought? Well, the minute that that question starts to get answered, the minute we start to talk about it, it becomes thought, spoken thought.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I mean, talking about it is um, already um, um, putting it in the realm of illusion and or delusion.
Yeah. Yeah, which is why it's more of a rhetorical question. It's one of those like you point to it and then just stop talking kind of questions.
So it's sort
Because
of a koan,
yeah, exactly. Because it is as soon as you start to conceptualize something, you're back in the realm of thought.
right? Hmm.
Um,
Okay, making
And
a
it
note
can
of
really
this.
lead us down that path of, okay, well, even if I don't name it, I'll say sensation is real. And that, like even without saying that, you can experience the feeling of sensation. But then if you even notice what the sensation is, how much of that has, I can feel sensations in the body, but how much are you seeing a mental representation of that sensation? Either of the location in the body or of some sort of, blue tingly light sensation blue tingly light image that kind of shows up to correspond with it? Do you see it as like a cloud? Do you see it as a texture of something? How much of that is being added on to the actual experience of just the raw sensation? How much do we have feelings of, ooh, I like that, or nope, don't like that. Let's run that one away. Let's distract from that. All of these things have layer upon layer of thought attached to them. So it becomes very difficult to actually find in our experience something which is not colored in some way by thought.
Yeah, without having taken the time to really look into it as deeply as you're describing, um, it does seem like, well, I mean, right now I can't think of anything. There might be an answer to that question, but right now I can't think of what that would be.
Yeah, it has
Um,
to be experiential. I mean, you have to really like just observe and try
right.
to find it. But I think you'll be surprised at even if it's like, well, okay, I can see the visual field. That's not a thought. Are you sure about that? Where is it showing up? Are you actually seeing the world out there, or is it showing up as a representation in the mind? If you, if you, if you, squint your eyes a little bit, does that change the world? Does that change the way the world looks? Yeah. So are
Mhm.
you actually blurring the physical world around you, or are you messing with your representation of it?
The second one.
Yeah. We can do all sorts of, things where you can like, um, play with the light that comes into the eyes, and it completely changes our perception of the world. Um, it shows that the world that we're seeing is not the actual world as it is. We are seeing our representation of it.
And so you're saying our representation of the world as we see it is modified by thought.
Almost in, well, we could say it is literally all thought because it's showing up, it's a fabrication of the mind. If we say that the thought is something which is created by the mind, then all of our experiences can be reduced to thought.
So then it sounds like it's important to be aware of, I mean, have it in your mind, ironic, that thought is not just simply something that is rendered in language.
Yeah, oh, exactly. Yeah, yeah. In fact, I would say because thought can be in any of the senses. You can have a thought that's language thought. For some people, they have thoughts that are very, very visual. If I say, imagine a polka dotted elephant, you can imagine that. It's a thought, right? You can see it, but it's a thought. If I said, imagine right now the taste of fresh apple pie, you can probably get a flavor of fresh apple pie in your mind.
Okay, so this is probably going to seem just absurdly obvious to you,
Yeah.
but it seems seems like something that was overlooked and is kind of a new idea, um, that I'm thinking about how I still I still have to work with it when the dogs are licking themselves
Hmm.
and that
Yeah.
reaction. And that's Fetter Five, that's the aversion, ill will, however you want
Yep.
to think of it. And that is the very thing we're talking about. I'm hearing that, I'm having a reaction,
Yep.
and that is the result of, with or without words, how it's thought about.
Exactly.
And so desire and aversion don't happen without thought.
Exactly. Exactly. You have to have some association with the sound for that sound to be annoying. Right? There has to be something about that sound. Maybe if it's something like a sound that is like physically painful, like somebody's jackhammering right next to your ear,
Yeah, or a really
there-
high
there-
pitch.
Yeah, something really high pitched. It physically hurts. We then have the kind of bodily response to that that it's like, take your hand off of the hot stove, move away from the sound that is probably going to physically damage your eardrum. Like that makes sense. That's okay. Uh,
Right.
when we have like beyond the level of like actual physical injury though, then there's something about that experience that we are putting on top of it that it doesn't inherently uh, contain. So we have to have some assumption about it. So when you hear the licking sound, what images show up? What sensations does that bring up in the body? What, again, thoughts can be smells, tastes, physical sensations, sounds, visual images, all of the possibilities of what we take in the world can be in have thought correlates to them. We can think all of these things because in a very real sense, that is what we are experiencing. We are experiencing our thought variation of all of these things. Um, when you smell fresh coffee, for instance, you're not actually smelling the coffee, right? The coffee is giving off certain chemicals, which then attach into the nose. The nose sends electrical signals, and the brain interprets all of these things into a smell of coffee. It doesn't mean that that's what coffee actually smells like objectively. It's our representation of what we smell in the coffee. Another animal, dog, I'm sure smells coffee completely different than we do, right? It's just our reference to it. And then we add on top of that, do I like the smell of coffee or do I hate it? What does that inspire me? Do I now want that coffee or is it like, how can anybody drink that? It's disgusting. Those are completely different experiences based on the same chemicals reaching the olfactory receptors in the nose, right? Like everything about that is a thought which is being created in the mind, in the perspective of the one who is smelling. That is all a level of mental fabrication. There is something called coffee, which is giving off, you know, some sort of chemical into the air. Beyond that, we have to interpret that into something.
This brings up some funny things because I'm reflecting on things that come up on a daily basis that um, where I approach this kind of thing, and I'll try to be. mm, I can't think of the word for it, but I understand that some people may may get kind of weirded out by it, so I'll try to be um, careful with this. But I have to go out back and clean up after the dogs several
Yep.
times a day,
Yep.
and there are times where I'm hit by odors that are really quite intense.
Yeah, yeah, I got
And
it.
hardly a day goes by when that doesn't happen, when I don't think about the fact that that's not actually what's happening.
Yeah.
And was it this morning or yesterday that happened? And this has been something that comes up within a frequency that um, surprisingly enough, I can't believe I'm going to say this. Um, when it happened, I think it was this morning that I was able to recognize that odor
Yeah.
as, for lack of a better word, pleasant.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was actually able to shift it.
Amazing. It's because it's
So,
subjective. It's just in the mind. There's nothing inherently pleasant or unpleasant about it.
right.
Another dog might go up to it, sniff it, and eat it. Like, you know, nothing wrong for him with that,
Oh,
It's completely based off of our wiring and our conditioning that says, nope, stay away from that. That will make you sick. We have an aversive reaction to that. That thing, that smells delicious. You can eat that. Okay, great. That won't kill me. Good. It all depends on the wiring that we have and that conditioning of what we've learned. And it is very possible to build up negative associations to things that we once loved. I mean, if think of
mhm.
like cigarette smokers, like longtime smokers who then quit and then get completely disgusted by the smell of smoke later on in life.
Yeah.
We have really variable reactions to our, different sensory phenomena based on where we are in our life, based on all of the assumptions and all of the conditioning that we've had around it. And we are creating our world every moment in that way. So if
Hey,
you if
go
you
ahead.
want to live in a world with pleasant dog poop, you're good to go. Yeah.
There, there are two or three words that you don't usually hear put together. Well, I've got a great story to illustrate just how true and correct that is. Um, Susanna hates fish. I mean,
Yeah.
really hates fish to the
Yeah.
point that she, until recent years, she's been convinced she was allergic to it. She's not actually.
Oh wow.
And we went to an Indian restaurant once and they had fish pakoras. And she did
Mhm.
not, none of us realized that they weren't the vegetable pakoras they
Oh
usually.
wow.
And
Yeah.
so she was eating them and this is really good. This is incredible. And then she asked one of the wait staff what it was. And he said, that's fish pakora. And
That's
immediately it all
wild.
changed. Went, wow, and spit it out and the fish awful, and but
Oh
just
wow.
before that,
That's
I mean,
funny.
it had been maybe, a good 10 minutes of her talking about it
Yeah.
and expressing how much she liked it.
Yeah. Yep. It is all in our mind.
Hmm.
It really is. It's which is wonderful. In some sense, the problem is when we don't realize that we have such clouded views that, the world is really the way that I think it is, and those people really are terrible, and that thing is really awful and I am right, because everything the way I experience it is the correct way to experience things. That's really problematic.
Yeah, it is.
And that's how we have a society that we currently have. So
Mm.
it's really important for all of us to recognize how much we are creating the world every moment, how much we're putting upon it, how much is not inherently true. And I mean, that alone is like a 24-hour investigation that we can do. And that alone, I think, is enough to absolutely wake everybody up to the point where, you can't have identification when you recognize that everything is a fabrication of the mind, including my sense of self. What I take to be me, all those things that feel like me are being interpreted as a sense of self, but they don't inherently have a self in them. Just like the coffee doesn't have an inherent an inherent scent to it, that is inherently good or bad, delicious or disgusting. All, it's all relative. In the same way, our sense of self and identity and who I take myself to be and how I think I am and all of that is just as variable, just as relative, and just as baseless as every other judgment that I make about, you know, chosen political topic or anything else.
So you're saying the way to approach practicing this, as you said, a 24-hour practice,
Hmm.
is anytime that these thoughts and associated physical sensations come up, is to stop and just put the attention on them and keep it there fixedly
Yeah.
until they begin to become an abstraction.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's one really good way to go into it because we can only believe that something is the way that it is until we put our full attention on it. Just like you said, like if you have the word apple and you say it over and over and over again, you realize that the sound apple does not have any correlation to the actual physical thing that we pluck off of a tree and eat.
And doesn't
They're,
mean
com-
anything.
it doesn't mean anything. They're completely unrelated, except in our minds that create this false association between them. So when I say crunchy red apple, I can taste something, right? Like I can taste what that is, and yet there's no actual apple here. There's no correlation to anything real in my environment, but I can smell it, I can feel the crunch, I can taste it in my mouth. All of that is fabricated by this symbol that we use, APPLE. And just having that sound, Apple, creates all of that. No association to anything real that's growing anywhere. So the more we can become aware of how much we are fabricating this entire experience of just having eaten or taking a bite of a crunchy red apple, the more we can just dissolve everything because you start to see it as its parts, not as the assumption that makes the whole thing out of it. It's like I can picture the Earth right now, right? And even if I was like in a space station looking down at the Earth, that gives you an idea of what the Earth is. And ironically, it would just be kind of this, maybe flat disk of blue and some green and some brown and some white. That's the Earth. But the more we zoom in on it, the more we start to see that, well, actually, it's got curvature and actually it's got all these mountains and it's got these people and these animals and these trees and like deserts and salt flats and I mean, all sorts of interesting things. And the more we zoom into it, we find it was not at all what we expected it to be. It starts to become much less definable because no matter where we look, it's something completely different. If I zoom in on the middle of the Sahara and say that's the Earth, that's going to be very different than if I zoom into the middle of the Pacific Ocean,
Right.
or the middle of the rainforest. Like, it's very hard to see these things as one thing when we go directly into one, very specific, and then, okay, well, now I'm in the rainforest, I go directly into one tree. Well, I guess that's the whole Earth now. However we experience it, we're taking a concept and trying to overlay it on something which is far too complicated and not at all related to what we conceptualize it as. And we do the same thing with all of our thoughts and all of our sensations. We take very easy, overly simplified snapshots and then associate them and say, okay, well, that's the body. That's me. That's my mind, all of that, and then just let it go. And instead, we want to zoom in so much that you get so close to the center of that one particular palm tree that you lose all sense of what the earth even means.
Well, I have to hand it to Douglas Harding because he really nailed it down when
Yeah.
that whole thing about how things appear at different
Yep.
distances.
Yeah, I love that.
In
Yep.
fact, it's it's almost an oversimplification in the sense that he makes it so simple to read or talk about very quickly that it could be that old thing of uh, you've understood it too quickly.
Yeah. 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 It,
So
yeah. Go ahead.
um, I'm thinking about situations where um, uh, I'm asked to do something and I don't really want to do it. And for a split second, there's a flash of not liking. Um, and there aren't any words. There's not a thought at all. At
Hmm.
least not anything can be heard,
Yep.
heard in the mind. And then it goes. It's just there's
Um,
that flash of, and then it goes. And all that happened was this very quick kind of flush of something in the body
mm,
that gets associated with disliking or not wanting to have to do that. And um, like I said, there's not anything happening in language. There's not
no. But
so, but it's
but
still like you said, it's still thought because it's happening in the mind.
exactly. Is there something happening in image in the mind? Are you seeing, if you
Hmm.
get asked to go clean up after the dogs, do you see a quick flash of the outdoor area? Do you see yourself doing the task that you were just asked to do? Is there an image that associates that? Because we have a hard time uh imagining something without, okay, that's gonna come out. I was gonna say we have a hard time imagining something without imagining it, but that's maybe not the best
It's a
way to
little
say
too
that.
circular.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. it's like if I have the idea that, you know, I don't want to drive 4 hours to go to a concert today. Well, I have to have in my mind the concept of 4 hours and what it would be like to sit in a car for 4 hours and maybe the discomfort or the tiredness or, how long it feels to be in a car for 4 hours and then also drive 4 hours back. And is it really worth it? All of those things have to be there for you to be able to have a feeling of, no, I don't want to do that.
Hmm.
Because otherwise, driving for 4 hours means just as little as the word apple when it's not associated with a fruit, right? We have to have some concept of what we're talking about and the ramifications of it. And that might come as a visual image of you sitting in a car for 4 hours or a feeling of, tired, like pre-tiredness in the body or achiness in the body from sitting for 4 hours in a car, or just some image that's a representation of it or some thought that's a representation of it, which we are then reacting to. Otherwise, again, the words don't have any inherent meaning of their own. We have to associate them with something. There has to be a concept there that we are deciding whether or not we want or don't want.
So, well, first of all, you're right about the mental images that happen very quickly because I started noticing that this week without
Mm,
going too far afield. I'll just, for sake of understanding, and maybe this might be useful to somebody. I When I notice that sense of feeling like there's someone here,
yeah.
it goes back to what you said on Sunday about how does that come online, and I've been trying to get a fix on that, and in doing so, I've started to notice there are very quick mental pictures, and
Yep.
I, if I hadn't been looking, I wouldn't have seen those because they happen so quickly, and this is actually something we've talked about before some time ago. They're not anything that um, they're not a mental image of, say, my body or my face or something that we know and are familiar with. Sometimes it
Yeah.
can be just, it almost looks like abstract art.
Yeah.
But it happens so quickly that if you don't make it a habit of looking for them and getting used to trying to really pay attention at that very initial moment, you won't see it.
Yeah.
So I do recognize that that happens. But let's set that aside for a moment and let's say that there aren't any words in the mind and there aren't any mental pictures.
Hmm.
It's still absolutely possible to be in that situation and just have the body sensation in response to some sort of external stimuli, somebody asking you to do something or whatever it might be, and still have that feeling of um, resistance or aversion without having mental pictures or any mental
Um,
talk.
I think there might be some things where, like, I wouldn't say somebody asking you to do something. I do think if you look closely enough, you're probably experiencing some sort of conceptualization about what that would entail for you to then have an aversive reaction to it. Um, Maybe something where, like, the the dog licking or something, because people often have like misophonia issues like that where just the sound of somebody chewing or breathing or something drives them insane. They may or may not have some recognizable association to it, that's happening in the mind. But for that, it's still it's your there might be something kind of unconscious there or subconscious that's below there's some connection, there's something that's below the surface, but it can also be in that kind of situation where there's something else that's at hand. Like, if you have a certain, maybe you're not in good not in a good place with your romantic partner and their chewing is driving you insane. It's really probably not so much about the chewing sound itself as it is about the underlying feelings of resentment or disapproval or whatever it is that you have with that person. So a lot of times when we find people have like misophonia stuff, it can also often be that there's some sort of undercurrent of uncomfortableness here, and that is being used as the scapegoat, basically. It's that sound that I can't, and that is like just, the one thing too many for me to put up with. That just really sets me off. There's probably something underneath that that you really weren't fully in contact with before.
Okay.
So do be aware if you're having that sort of reaction. If it's that you aren't really, external, explicitly seeing some image of the thing or having some overt association with the thing, notice if there are feelings of emotions that are tied in with the source of that sound, with the dogs. Is there something that's going on? Might be even that it's not necessarily associated directly with the dogs, but are you feeling something? Are you feeling stressed out? Are you feeling, sad? Are you feeling something beforehand? And then that is like, again,
Ah.
that just added trigger that's like, can't take that.
Well, now this only addresses one specific instance or
Mhm.
situation. So there are going to be plenty of other times where that looking a little more deeply will be appropriate or necessary. But in the situations I'm thinking of, you're right. There is something that kind of preloads the situation in that usually when that happens, I have something else I'm trying to do or something I want to do. And
Mhm.
there's this desire and attachment to that particular thing. And then I'm getting, my path to that thing is being intersected by
Yep.
something else. And, you know,
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
So yeah, you're right. You're right.
Exactly. So you can both look into the aversion side of, why do I feel that discomfort around this? Oh, okay, it's because, I I wanted to do that other thing and can't do it. Now it has both 4 and 5, both craving and aversion have to do with our inability to accept that reality is the way that it is. So in that moment, you have the idea that I would like to be doing this other thing right now. I want to do that, but now I can't, and I have to do this other thing instead. In that, you are at odds with reality. The reality is that you're needed to do this other thing instead. You had a thought that you were going to be able to do the thing that you wanted to do, and that did not pan out. Sorry, maybe it will later, but right now it's just not in the cards, so that is not happening. So now you are taking a thought about what could have happened, comparing that to the reality of what is actually happening, and making a problem out of it because I want the option that I don't have. Couldn't have it really, because you don't. But damn it, I can think about it, so now I can make myself miserable wanting that thing and complaining that I don't have it, when in fact I have to do this other thing that I don't want to do, even though I am doing it. So instead, we come down to the actuality of, okay, I'm doing this thing. If I had been given a whole choice of possibilities, it might not be the one that I actively chose. But can I do it without thinking about all the other things that might have happened? Because circling back to what we talked about before, we have no proof that they actually could have happened. We have ideas, we have images, we have imaginations about what might have happened, or I might have done this differently, or this could have happened and then I would have been able to do that, or I could have chosen this, or I should have chosen that. But we have absolutely no proof that any of that is the case. All we know is that you are not currently doing that thing, even though the mind says, I would prefer to do that instead of what I'm currently doing. Okay.
Well, huh?
I
Oh,
said,
okay.
okay, that's all you got.
All right. Well, I
All
will
right.
talk after a while.
Look forward to it. Thank you
All right.
so much.
Take
Have a
care.
good one. Bye.
Bye.